I stood outside the New York Times building, clutching the stack of documents I was about to submit to the editorial board, my eyes following the hurried streams of people rushing down 8th Avenue. As the youngest investigative financial reporter in the newsroom, I understood all too well the ruthless machinery of this world on one side, the shadowy power brokers of Wall Street on the other, ordinary people being drained of every last dollar. My name is Emily Carter, 27 years old. My job is to expose those people. Maybe that's why I was drawn to Ryan from the very beginning. It was at last spring's Boston Financial Crime Summit, amid a sea of black suits, red ties, and tense, rigid faces filling the stage. Ryan Whitmore stood out effortlessly, tall, composed, dressed in a tailored navy suit that was sharp but understated. His eyes were keen, as though they always saw things a few steps ahead of everyone else. Emily Carter. Right, he approached with a calm confidence, his gaze meeting mine without the slightest hint of intimidation. Your expose on Mirage Capital rattled quite a few investors. I arched an eyebrow, that familiar reporter's reflex kicking in. But he just smiled a smile I couldn't quite decipher. Half admiring, half testing me. You read it all, I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Every word. Ryan tilted his head slightly. Not many people have the guts to dig that deep. And just like that, it started. After the conference, Ryan invited me out for coffee, then more coffee, then dinners. The conversation stretched into long, winding hours. He was sharp, insightful. And what struck me most for someone in finance, not at all flashy. No supercars, no Swiss watches, no wild parties. Instead, he took me to cozy art galleries in Soho, quiet wine bars tucked away in the West Village. He always carried this little black leather notebook, jotting down random thoughts throughout the day, a habit I'd never seen in anyone else from the fast-paced world of Wall Street. When I once teased, afraid the FBI might hack your phone, he just chuckled softly. Technology isn't as trustworthy as you think. There was only one thing Ryan never talked about: his family. 6 months of dating. And despite my careful prodding, his answers were always vague. My parents live a quiet life up in New England. They don't like attention. Or, my family's complicated. Emily, I don't want to drag you into that mess. A part of me wanted to believe him. But another part, the part of me trained to uncover financial frauds, remained wary. One night, I overheard him on a late phone call, thinking I was asleep. He spoke in a hushed voice, but I clearly heard the man on the other end say, Charles. Charles wants you to handle her carefully. Charles, who the hell was Charles? The next day, I asked. Ryan brushed it off, saying it was just some old colleague pestering him about an investment. But the cracks kept widening. He'd never taken me to his home, even on Thanksgiving. He claimed he had an emergency meeting in Chicago. Holidays away from family, especially among America's upper class, was rare, if not suspicious. And then the package arrived. Ryan was away on a 2-day business trip and had asked me to house sit. While tidying up the kitchen, I noticed a FedEx box sitting next to the fridge. The sender label read Charles Whitmore, Greenwich, Connecticut. My stomach clenched. Whitmore. I instantly grabbed my phone and Googled. Dozens of headlines flooded the screen. Whitmore Capital Management hedge fund billionaire under SEC investigation for pension fund fraud. For a few moments, I couldn't even move. That name, that address, that billion-dollar empire, Ryan's family. When Ryan returned, I played it cool. Oh, your dad sent you a package, I said casually, watching him closely. For a split second, his face stiffened. He quickly reached for the box, lowering his voice. Just some old paperwork. I told you, I keep my distance from them. For the first time, his eyes avoided mine. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of this luxury apartment that once felt so perfect and now so cold. Had I fallen for a man, or for a mystery begging to be unraveled. And for the first time, my instincts as an investigative reporter roared louder than my heart. I knew then I had to investigate. The next day, I took 3 days off. Officially, it was to unwind from work stress. As my editor-in-chief had kindly suggested after the long string of investigations I'd recently wrapped up, in reality, I couldn't focus on any investigation except the one called Ryan Whitmore. I started with the most basic tools every investigative reporter in New York knows by heart: public asset records. Searching for Charles Whitmore Greenwich. CT pulled up results almost instantly. Whitmore Capital Management, a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. Under his name was a dizzying list of holdings: a 20,000 square foot mansion buried deep within one of Greenwich's most exclusive gated communities, a private marina, equity stakes in healthcare, tech, and real estate companies. I sat frozen in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, both hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee. The full picture was taking shape in my mind. I had spent the last 6 months in love with the heir to one of the most notorious financial dynasties on the East Coast. But why had he kept it hidden? And how had the Whitmore name never surfaced even once during all these months? As I dug deeper into federal filings, things grew darker. Whitmore Capital was under investigation by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, for pension fund fraud. Financial articles on Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal were raising serious allegations. Charles Whitmore was suspected of using a network of boutique investment funds to siphon billions from pension accounts across the Midwest. The investigation was ongoing, but if found guilty, this could become the biggest financial scandal since Bernie Madoff. My stomach tightened. Ryan knew all of this. Of course he did. And yet he had chosen to hide it from me. But I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I picked up the phone and called the one person I trusted most in this business. Mark Hansen, a private investigator and former financial data analyst with the NYPD. We had collaborated on several internal investigations of hedge funds over the years. Whitmore Capital. Mark nearly shouted when I brought up the name. Emily. Are you kidding me? That's a hornet's nest. I'm not kidding. I exhaled slowly. I need the full asset structure. The names on the auxiliary trusts, offshore entities, everything. He paused for a few seconds before letting out a dry laugh. So you're dating the only son of one of the East Coast's financial godfathers? Damn, you have a type. I closed my eyes, forcing down the lump rising in my throat. Just help me. I need the truth. All right, but I'll say this: the deeper you go, the more people you're going to piss off. 3 days later, Mark sent me an encrypted file. What he uncovered shook me even harder than I'd anticipated. Beyond the official Whitmore Capital headquarters, the family controlled dozens of shell corporations in tax havens like the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Panama. The suspected laundered funds under investigation had ballooned to over $9 billion, a staggering number, even by Wall Street standards. Most alarming leaked internal documents showed massive political contributions funneled from Whitmore Capital's shell companies into recent federal election campaigns. At that moment, any lingering doubt vanished behind Ryan's polished, understated exterior lay a family at the center of a sprawling, shadowy power network. But where exactly did Ryan stand in all of this? Was he truly innocent, as he always insisted? Or had he simply been playing the sweet, attentive boyfriend while secretly acting as an extension of his father's empire? The weight of that question gnawed at me by the hour. I stared at my laptop screen, watching the Whitmore name flicker across rows of data. And I knew either I walk away now or I step into a storm I may never escape. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Hey, babe, can we do dinner tomorrow night? I need to talk to you about my family. My heart pounded. Was this the moment he came clean? Or a preemptive strike before I could make my move? I took a deep breath. Sure, come over. But inside, I had already made my decision. Whatever Ryan said tomorrow, I wasn't backing down. Morton's Steakhouse on Park Avenue was fully booked, like always on a Friday night. But as usual, Ryan had easily secured a private table in one of the VIP rooms upstairs, wielding that invisible kind of influence I was only now starting to fully grasp. When I walked in, he was already there. The classic gray suit, black tie flawless as always. But tonight, something weighed heavier in his eyes. The calm, charming composure was gone. He was tense. I kept my face steady, sat down, fingers tightening around the chilled glass of water in front of me. The room was so quiet I could hear the faint clinking of cutlery from the next table. "Thanks for coming," Ryan began, his voice lower and rougher than usual. I I know I've kept too much from you." I lifted my gaze, locking eyes with him. "You're right. So what do you want to say tonight?" He swallowed, lowering his voice even further as if someone might be listening even though we were sealed in. "Emily, my father, Charles Whitmore, he is under investigation. Whitmore Capital is in serious trouble with the pension funds. The SEC's involved." He paused briefly, as though weighing every word. "But I swear to you, I'm not involved in any of it. I've kept my distance from them for years." I nodded slightly. "And yet you're still accepting gifts." The package from Greenwich Ryan froze. He clearly hadn't expected me to bring that up so bluntly. It was just some family documents, some paperwork about inheritance. I didn't want you to worry. I tilted my head, watching his every micro expression. "Ryan, you're smart. You know exactly what I do for a living. Did you really think I wouldn't start digging?" He sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "I know. And that's exactly what scares me. You don't understand. This isn't just a financial investigation. It goes deeper. Then tell me." My tone sharpened just slightly. Sharpened. "I'm grown enough to hear the truth, aren't I?" Ryan held my gaze. For a moment, I saw his gray eyes tremble, caught in some violent inner conflict. "My father." His voice dropped even lower. "He has dangerous connections. It's not just the SEC. The FBI, DOJ, even Homeland Security are watching him. There's money, routed through offshore trusts. Transactions I can't even fully trace." I sat frozen, each word from his mouth stripped away another layer of the calm I'd been clinging to. And do you know the worst part? His voice was barely a whisper. "It's not just about money. Emily, people have disappeared after touching Whitmore's files. Independent investigators tried digging deeper and suddenly retired or vanished completely from finance." My chest tightened. But inside, my professional instincts burned hotter than ever. If verified, this could be the biggest political financial scandal in America in decades. "You still communicate with them?" I asked softly. Ryan shook his head faintly. "Only for mandatory inheritance meetings. But Emily, oh, don't go any further. Please." His eyes pleaded. But beneath it, there was genuine fear. "They will destroy you. The media is just the tip of the iceberg. Behind it is a deeply tangled political power network." I pressed my lips together. The one question pounding in my head was Ryan truly trying to protect me? Or was he protecting himself? He barely touched his food all night. We ended the dinner quickly. As we stepped out of the restaurant, he gently grabbed my hand. "Please, Emily, stop. Don't be an investigative journalist this time." I smiled faintly. "You fell in love with an investigative journalist, Ryan. That was the problem from the start." He froze for a brief second, then let go of my hand. That night, back at my apartment, I sat in front of my laptop, the cold blue glow casting harsh shadows across my face. If Ryan was telling the truth, then I was standing on the edge of a bottomless pit of power and corruption. But if he was still hiding something, I had every reason to keep digging. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mark Hansen. "Got something more for you." This goes deeper than I thought. Emily. I opened the attached file. And instantly, my blood ran cold. A list of banking transactions, anonymous wire transfers flowing in from foreign entities, at least 5 of them showing internal authorization stamped Ryan Whitmore. I stared at the screen, at the name Ryan Whitmore flashing under the authorized signatory column in the bank transaction log. Every heartbeat pounded violently against my chest. Everything Ryan had told me tonight directly contradicted the data now sitting in front of me. He wasn't distanced from it all. He had personally authorized at least 5 wire transfers into offshore trusts, the exact accounts under investigation by the SEC and FBI. Ryan had lied. But why was he covering up a crime, or was there something even deeper? I forced myself to breathe, to stay clear-headed. Emotions were the most dangerous thing for an investigative journalist. I couldn't afford to get tangled in personal betrayal. I needed facts. I needed truth. I immediately arranged to meet Mark in person at his private office, a small, discreet space tucked behind a financial broker's bar in Lower Manhattan. From here on out, no more emails, no digital files, Mark said bluntly the moment I walked in. You wouldn't believe how deep their surveillance net goes. He tossed a thick folder onto the table. I opened it. In addition to the banking data, there was now a full organizational chart detailing the shell companies tied to Whitmore Capital. The terrifying part isn't just the money. Emily. Mark spoke slowly. The real problem is that this entire structure is directly connected to several PACs funding federal election campaigns. To put it plainly, Charles Whitmore is laundering money to manipulate U.S. politics. I looked up, a cold chill running down my spine. So where does Ryan stand in all of this? My voice was hoarse. Mark exhaled, leaning on the desk. He's not the mastermind, I do believe that. But Ryan was used by his father as an intermediary approver. Just enough to legalize the money flow without fully controlling the system. If this explodes, Ryan's the first one they'll nail to the wall. My fists clenched tight. Ryan had known he was the sacrificial pawn from the start. But why hide it from me? Out of fear I'd leave, or out of loyalty to his family? Mark fixed his gaze on me, sharp and cold. Listen, Emily, if you keep digging, you're stepping into very dangerous territory. I gave a dry smile. Mark, I was born to walk into dangerous territory. The following days, I practically disappeared from my normal life. I ignored Ryan's calls and texts. Every waking hour was spent combing through old investigations, tracking anonymous accounts, cross-referencing political contributions. And then a new name surfaced, a name I hadn't expected, Senator David Langford, chairman of the U.S. Senate Finance Committee. He was the poster child for national pension reform, always on TV championing virtue. But buried in Mark's cross-referenced donor list, at least 7 PACs behind Langford's campaigns had funds originating from Whitmore Capital's shell entities. The network was even deeper than I'd feared. Now I understood why Ryan was so afraid. He wasn't just terrified of being pulled into his father's crimes. He feared the entire power system Whitmore Capital was feeding people capable of influencing the federal government itself. A week later, I received a hand-delivered envelope. No return address. Inside were 3 lines typed neatly, "Stop. Do not dig further." The third party knows. I sat frozen for a long moment, cold sweat beating down my temples. Who was the third party? Ryan, his father, someone else? Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Come to the Fairmont Hotel room 2311. If you want the whole truth. I checked the clock. 10:42 p.m. I knew it was a trap, but it might also be the final key. I grabbed my coat, leaving my apartment with only one question echoing in my mind. Am I still in control of this game? The Fairmont Hotel on Madison Avenue glowed under soft golden lights, its grand lobby hushed and elegant as if it had never hosted a single dirty deal. But I knew better. Behind that polished facade lay countless secrets. And tonight, one of them was about to surface. I stood before room 2311. My heartbeat pounded so hard I could barely hear. Steady. Emily? It's just a meeting? Or maybe it's the last step. I double-checked the hidden camera tucked inside my coat button. Then I knocked. After a few moments of silence, the door cracked open just wide enough for me to recognize who was inside. It wasn't Ryan. It wasn't Charles Whitmore. It was Veronica Hart. I froze. Veronica Hart, Whitmore Capital's senior legal counsel. Charles's most trusted lieutenant for over 15 years. A powerful, cold-blooded woman from Washington's legal elite. One of Forbes's 50 most influential women on Wall Street. Come in. Emily. Her voice was calm, like this was just another business meeting. I stepped into the spacious suite. A glass of red wine sat on the table beside a thick stack of documents. The door closed behind me, suffocating the room. Veronica sat down on the sofa, crossing her legs, her eyes scanning me like a scalpel. Her smile was thin, sharp. You've been keeping us very busy these past few weeks. I stayed silent, locking my eyes on hers. You're a smart girl, Emily, Veronica continued. You've gotten farther than even Ryan realizes. That cut like a knife. She was confirming it. Ryan was likely just another disposable pawn. What do you want from me? I asked flatly. Veronica raised an eyebrow, her smile tightening. We're here to propose a solution. Mutually beneficial. She placed a thick envelope on the table. $10 million. All you have to do is sign this NDA and walk away from everything you've uncovered. I stared at the envelope, my blood growing colder. For most reporters, that sum could mean an entire career bought and paid for. To me, it was an insult. You think I do investigative journalism for the money? I scoffed. Veronica remained composed, taking a small sip of wine. No, I believe you do it for truth. But let's be realistic. What you hold doesn't just destroy Whitmore Capital. You'd trigger a domino effect reaching people you can't even begin to comprehend. Senator Langford is only the surface. She paused, lowering her voice, Emily. If you push further, your career and your life will become collateral damage. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. Are you threatening me? Veronica smiled again, but her eyes were ice. No. I'm offering you survival. The air grew taut like a wire about to snap. Then she leaned in slightly, speaking slower. Don't let your feelings for Ryan fool you about your place in this story. Even he isn't outside Charles's design. The Whitmore dynasty has survived 3 generations not by being naive. The chill ran down my spine. Even Ryan was expendable. Veronica slowly stood up, swirling her wine. I'll give you 48 hours to consider. After that, this offer disappears. I rose to my feet, locking eyes with her. Firm. Tell Charles I'm not someone who can be silenced by money. She flashed a razor-thin smile. Don't let your journalistic ethics be the death of you, Emily. When I stepped out into the night, the sharp New York wind cut my skin like needles. I walked swiftly past the towering skyscrapers, my mind a storm. The question was no longer whether I was ready. The question now was, am I prepared to take on the entire system? And deep down, I already knew my answer. Yes. But this time, I needed stronger allies. I pulled out my phone and called Mark. We have to bring this into the light. But not just the two of us anymore. I want your full special investigation team hackers, source protection lawyers, former federal agents. All of them. Mark hesitated for a few seconds, then answered, all right. But Emily, from here on out, there's no way back. I looked up at Manhattan's night sky, the Times Square lights flickering in the distance like invisible eyes watching. I knew, and I had made my choice. 1 week later, My tiny Brooklyn apartment had transformed into a makeshift war room. Mark brought in two key members of his special team: Ethan Doyle, former FBI agent, specializing in international finance, now working as an independent investigator, middle-aged, solid build. His sharp eyes scanning every corner of the room like any space might be bugged. Sienna Cruz, Cuban-American hacker, once a top cybersecurity expert at a Wall Street bank before she'd grown disgusted with its filth. Short-cropped green hair, black nail polish. Sienna smirked the moment she laid eyes on the Whitmore files. "This is bigger than anything I've ever broken into," she said, her fingers gliding across the keyboard like a dance. Their encryption setup is like a gallery full of forged paintings in the Louvre. I stared at the glowing money flow chart on the large screen, dozens of financial branches spidering out from Whitmore Capital into shell charities, then funneled into federal super PACs. Ethan spoke, his voice heavy. "Charles Whitmore isn't just defrauding pension funds. He's built an underground financial political empire wrapped around the spine of Washington," Sienna added, smirking. "And the best part is, the government knows. But they need someone to fire the first shot." I clenched my fist. Then will be that shot. The plan was laid out. Timed to the hour, Mark continued tracking down witnesses who'd been bribed or intimidated into silence. Ethan reached out to federal prosecutors who had been quietly investigating behind closed doors but hadn't dared to go public. Sienna hacked into one of Whitmore's offshore backup servers in Singapore home to the master blueprint titled Operation Silver Hand, laying out the full laundering structure. After 3 nearly sleepless days, Sienna exhaled. Got it. On the screen appeared dozens of PDF files, their titles impossible to misinterpret: Silver Hand Master Flow, Foreign Pack Channeling Plan, Langford Coordination Protocol. For several long seconds, none of us spoke. This was the silver bullet, enough to collapse the entire Whitmore empire. Not just Charles, not just Ryan, but some of the highest political figures in the country. That same night, I received a sudden message from Ryan. "We need to meet. Please." I debated for a long time. What was Ryan to me now? Accomplice victim, or still just a terrified lover? In the end, I agreed. But this time, I chose the location: a small cafe near the Williamsburg Bridge. Public enough to feel safe, but quiet enough to talk. When I arrived, Ryan was already there, noticeably thinner, his once sharp gray eyes now clouded with raw fear. "Emily." His voice was hoarse. "What are you doing?" I stared at him, unblinking, looking for the truth. "Ryan, the truth you should have told me from the beginning." Ryan gripped both hands tightly on the table. "My father, they know you're investigating. I'm begging you. Stop now. You don't understand how far they'll go." "Oh, I do." My voice was cutting, like when Veronica offered me 10 million to shut up, or like all the witnesses who've mysteriously disappeared over the years. Ryan inhaled sharply, biting his lip. "I know, but it's spiraled beyond anyone's control. My father, he holds enough secrets to bring this entire government crashing down if he's cornered." I kept my voice steady. "And you? How many transactions did you authorize? How many foreign trusts bear your name? How many times did you bow and play pawn for him?" Ryan's eyes glistened, his voice rising. "Emily, you think I wanted this? You think I had a choice?" My entire life was groomed under his hand. It was all mapped out before I could even understand it. Don't assume I control what my father's done with my name. I held his gaze. For the first time, I saw it, the raw truth in his eyes. Ryan was a prisoner, trapped in the gilded cage of his own bloodline. But that didn't erase his responsibility. "Ryan, facts are facts," I said slowly. "Either you stand for justice, or you sink with your family." His head dropped, shoulders trembling. After a long, heavy breath, he whispered, "You have the evidence already, don't you?" I nodded. Silence hung for several long minutes. Finally, Ryan lifted his head, his gaze hardening, then use me. I frowned. He looked straight at me, not flinching for the first time in this entire conversation. I'm willing to turn federal witness. I'll get you access to files even your hacker hasn't cracked yet. But under one condition, you stay protected. I won't let them touch you. I stared at him, frozen. This might be the first time Ryan had truly chosen a side. And I knew right then the game had entered a whole new level. 2 months later, the federal courthouse in Manhattan had become the epicenter of national attention. Media trucks lined Foley Avenue from dawn. Crowds pressed against barricades as news networks set up tents for nonstop live coverage. Trial of the century, the Whitmore empire collapses. Senator Langford faces. Federal political corruption charges. Journalist girlfriend surprise key witness. I stood in the grand courtroom, wearing a simple but sharp navy suit. My fingers lightly gripping the familiar ballpoint pen that had become my quiet good luck charm. Sitting beside me was the lead federal prosecutor, Chief Agent Martin Cruz, his sharp gaze steady with determination. Across from us, inside the defendant's box, sat Charles Whitmore, the Wall Street titan of the last 2 decades, now reduced to a frail figure in an orange prison jumpsuit under the harsh fluorescent lights. To his right was Veronica Hart. Her face was eerily calm, as if this trial were just another board meeting she'd attended 1,000 times before. In the special witness section, Ryan sat quietly. His gray eyes followed me, still those same eyes, but now filled with resolve. He was the key that had allowed this entire case to break wide open. Prosecutor Cruz rose and began, "Your Honor, the evidence presented today will not merely expose financial fraud on a massive scale. We will demonstrate that the defendant, Charles Whitmore, and his associates ran an international money laundering operation, using foreign trusts to illegally fund federal election campaigns, manipulate national financial policy, and jeopardize the security of American democracy itself." The air in the courtroom grew dense. After 2 relentless weeks of presenting thousands of pages of documents, financial analyses, and PAC funding records, the most critical moment arrived: the insider testimony, Ryan Whitmore. Ryan stood, his voice low but steady. "My father, Charles Whitmore, did not just create Whitmore Capital. He built an entire shadow power structure. I was used as legal cover to sign off on dozens of wire transfers, but was never made fully aware of the scope. Only when witnesses started disappearing did I realize I was just another expendable pawn." The courtroom fell completely silent as the prosecution projected Operation Silver Hand, the laundering blueprint Sienna and the team had hacked. Financial arrows stretched like a spider web from Singapore, Panama, the Cayman Islands, funneling into super PACs backing Senator Langford, senior politicians, national pension reform committees, even presidential campaign funds. Viewers across the country sat frozen. A political machine capable of controlling America's financial system was being exposed live. Sentencing day. The federal judge banged the gavel, voice booming. "Upon full consideration of the evidence and testimony, the defendant, Charles Whitmore, is hereby sentenced to 150 years in federal prison without parole. Veronica Hart, 75 years. Additional co-conspirators will face ongoing federal prosecution as the investigation expands." The courtroom erupted. Cameras flashed nonstop. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC ran blazing red headlines across every screen. In the gallery, Senator Langford hung his head as FBI agents moved in, arrest warrant in hand. The Whitmore network collapsed before millions of Americans watching live. That evening, I sat alone on a bench at Battery Park, gazing across New York Harbor sparkling under city lights. Ryan quietly approached and sat beside me. "We made it through," he whispered. I smiled faintly. This was only the tip of the iceberg. There are still plenty of people behind them. But at least the truth finally had its voice. Ryan turned to me, his voice tight with emotion. "Thank you, and for saving me from my own family." I looked at him for a long, silent moment. "No one saved anyone." "Ryan," I replied softly, "we each made our choice." He nodded quietly. For the first time, I saw true peace in his face. We sat there in silence, the cold late autumn breeze sweeping through New York. But inside me, only one thing remained peace. I had fallen in love with a man who hid his family from me, but in the end, it was the truth that saved us both from the abyss.